call this Employee Benefit Trust meeting to order. First item on the agenda, approval of agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented? Motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Next item, approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
I'll make the motion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Motion and second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item 4, presentations. I'll hand it over to Allison Sparks and Jamie Walton.
That's super professional you are at this. 1 years in and you're like, ready. You're excited about insurance. Welcome to you all. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to go through claims data. So as we normally do, we're already in discussions with leadership in the district to make plan decisions for the upcoming fiscal year. And so within our presentation today, we'll also discuss some of the options and considerations that are being reviewed with leadership and also even through staff surveys. First couple of pages are going to be claims information. We have here our self-funded versus our fully insured equivalent, which is essentially the loss ratios what we've somewhat generated based on what we're spending on our stop loss claims, plus fixed fees, all that good stuff on our self-funding plan. So that sort of that middle column, that total SF cost is what our actual spend has been for this current plan year. And then we also have then our estimated fully insured equivalent, which is essentially where we budgeted. Our loss ratio, as you can see, it averages out for the first 7 months of the plan year to about 85%. A couple things to note, you see kind of at the bottom there, these numbers do not include the almost $2 million that were paid out as quote runout claims. We discussed this in the fall when we met. Those runout claims were essentially claims that were incurred in our prior plan year that we were still responsible for, but weren't paid through our channels, and so what don't show up on our personified reporting. So when we see July, for example, at only an 18% loss ratio, we could pretty easily say, or we could drop that $2 million into that bucket. But overall, our spending is actually looking better than it has. When we met with the actuaries most recently to do a preliminary renewal analysis, they took this data and then our historical data plus the runout claims information, and they actually determined that the increase this year should be roughly 2%. On and that's on the expected basis, right? And so as a self-funded plan, the goal is always to build in a little bit of margin. Right, we have our expected cost, and then we have the maximum cost where our stop loss, aggregate stop loss covers us. And so the goal is to find some place in the middle. And so it was recommended to the district to add an additional 10% to that as some additional margin. I believe those discussions are still in place though. We'll speak to that. I'll take an opportunity to talk about that. But that's where we stand currently. Our stop loss insurance itself and their expected cost and maximum cost will not be finalized until we have claims data through March. So that's why we always engage the independent actuary first, so that we can have some range of information ahead of putting contracts out, getting plan changes in place. We were to wait until end of March and into April to get those numbers directly from the stop loss vendor. It'd be a bit challenging to handle open enrollment and contracts out timely and all of that. So overall, looking like some improvements. The next page just shows last year as a prior plan year. Obviously, we know we ran hot last year and the year before, but always like to have a frame of reference so that we have some indication as to where we have been, where we're coming from, and where are we going. That things are looking good. Any questions on any of these pages, these first few pages before we move on to more year-over-year comparison?
And maybe that's what you'll go to. I'm just noticing December and January seem to be quite a bit higher. Was there a reason for that?
I mean, where's my page going? Not specifically, we have some large claimant, information, but nothing really specifically that was called out. We don't have as many, shock claims as we have had, so nothing crazy at that point. Again, when we're looking at July, August, and even September, those are relatively immature claims months. So it's kind of hard to make a comparison to those months. But as a loss ratio stands, we don't have any crazy new high cost claimants that we weren't already aware of that were emerging through December and January.
But a lot of times, because we're off or teachers are off for those 3 weeks during December, beginning of January, a lot of them will schedule a surgery or whatever they need to have something done during that
Okay,
time
that
since they're
totally
off.
makes sense.
Yeah.
We see that sometimes in summer too.
Yeah.
More often in summer than even.
Yeah.
Okay. This next one is our claims by plan year. This one shows the full plan year for the last several years. Obviously, we're trending higher and higher. Last year was pretty rough. But let's look at the next page. I think this is a little bit more equitable to look at. This is our claims year to date. So this is showing from July through January claims for the current year and the prior years for the same reporting period. And so as we can see, we are still running higher, obviously than prior years, but it's certainly a marked improvement compared to last year. We're about $300,000 less in claimants than we were at the same time last year. And then when we consider the almost $2 million paid in runout claims, those should technically be attributed to that green bar. And so when we make that comparison, we're running far better than we were last year. Questions, comments? I see Chris mathing. Math teacher mathing? All right. These next few slides are large cost claimants. Again, historical, current and historical. Right now, this first page is 25-26 for our current plan year. And it looks like, we have, 5 high cost claimants that are over $100,000 in claims. Again, this is through January. And with our current plan year, we have that aggregating specific deductible of $480,000, and that's yet to be fully satisfied. So we haven't had any stop loss reimbursements, but the good news is we still haven't satisfied that aggregating specific deductible, which is good news because it means we hopefully won't have it next year. And to see that only a couple of these folks are above the $150,000 threshold is pretty encouraging. Again, last year's, as a frame of reference behind there, for the full year, we had $2.25 million in high cost claimants, many of which were far above the $150,000 threshold. I mean, we have 4 of them over $300,000 on an individual basis. So this adjustment to our current high cost claimant is that we were able to bypass a lot of the end-stage renal disease claimants that we have on the plan still, but we're able to outsource those services, which makes a huge difference. thoughts, questions on any of the claims information before we start talking through some of the plan considerations?
We're gonna do medical plans.
Yeah, this next page is essentially what the district has been considering, primarily because we had some hiccups this year with the integration of the IMS program. We've had IMS in place for a couple of years now under the Aetna plan and Aetna administration, I should say. And with that, employees were utilizing IMS services and were in a position where they had a high deductible plan in place. They were not being asked to help to satisfy their deductible first, which is out of compliance. And so this year, under the new TPA Personify, they found that this was happening and corrected it, which was not wonderful news for the employees. They don't really care if they're in great compliance. They care that they now have to pay a deductible when they haven't had to pay a deductible previously. And so part of the impetus for making an adjustment to the plan offerings and potentially removing the high deductible plan was largely driven by that. And so it's been discussed with leadership and a survey gone out to the employees. It's been discussed within the compensation committee to remove the high deductible plan altogether and offer only the two PPO plans. I'll let Jamie speak to that if you'd like to now, or on your presentation, but she said it's overwhelmingly agreed upon to make that move.
We asked several different questions, but one of the questions was if you didn't have to meet a deductible and you could just pay a copay to go to the doctor, how would you feel about that? And I think we had almost 75 to 80% of people. Yeah.
And so with that, the district is right now funding $1,200 toward HSAs. $1,200 per person toward HSAs. We have 94% of the district's population enrolled in the high deductible plan. And so it equates to about $1.2 million directly into the HSAs that an employee may use for medical expenses, or they may forget they have the money and not use it at all, or they may not need care, or they may not just want to keep that money. And so what will essentially happen is under that Garner program, which if you want to flip to the next page, there's some information here, but under the Garner program, we have that HRA. Oh, can you skip that page right
Yes.
there? Yeah. We have the HRA that's in place currently with the Garner program that allows for an employee to receive reimbursements when they are going to those preferred providers that are considered to be high value doctors. So lower costs, better outcomes. And what has happened as you kind of look through this as far as engagement, what has happened is folks are not really engaging with the program that the district is paying for and, has funds set aside for the HRA. They're not really using that because of the high enrollment in the high deductible plan. Those folks have to satisfy their deductible before they can use the HRA benefit, the HRA funds. And so ultimately what will happen is instead of funding the HSA to a high deductible plan, that will no longer be an eligible benefit. They will instead have funds available under the HRA that an employee can be reimbursed from. But the potential savings to the district is there because now employees may or may not use those funds. And if they don't use them, then it's no cost to the district. But the funds are still there as an incentive for employees. They just have to use them, appropriately through the Garner channel. So we're hopeful that people will see that as a value, that it won't appear to be a lost benefit for them. Given that
win-win program, Jamie.
Kind of.
Yeah, and we have had the Garner program in place, currently, it's not, it's new this year, but it will help really engage people, like a win-to-win. I call it win-to-win on steroids because it uses the whole Blue Cross network, but it helps to reimburse the employees for going through those channels and seeing, appropriate doctors and all that good stuff.
And really, they can, the minute that they spend $30 to go to the doctor for their copay, they could turn around and turn that in to Garner and get reimbursement right away. So the amount we have set for Garner right now is $1,000, and that's what your deductible is for the PPO, 1,000. And so potentially you could maybe not even have any out of pocket if you were able to use the Garner doctors.
So we're hopeful that that makes it, makes a difference to the plan. I believe that employees will see all of this as an enhancement. They'll, if the HSA is, or my deductible is dropped, which seems to be the case and likely of any board approval, we'll see employee engagement in this program, which is a cost savings program. Ultimately, it saves money on claims, so it will help the plan. But also employees will be back to, I only have my copay to spend. And to Jane's point, I can be reimbursed for it right away.
Yep.
And they'll be able to use the IMS product or program without having to satisfy their
And they can choose to flex their
Yes.
additional
If
dollars.
they wanted it
Yep.
at $100.
Mhm.
What are the Garner providers?
So what Garner does is, we have the Blue Cross network in place. So what Garner does is they use the Blue Cross network and they go through and they filter out, through tons of claims data, the doctors within the Blue Cross network that have, lower pricing but better outcomes. So they do it through all sorts of data analytics that are, for people who are smarter than I am, far smarter. But it essentially filters out, of the Blue Cross network, the high value, positive outcome doctors, and points employees to those doctors. And then when an employee engages with one of the Garner providers, the discount for the actual service itself is much higher. So when the plan is billed, it's billed at a more deeply discounted pricing. And then the employee themselves, it is a deductible program, they have a lower cost out of pocket. But if they do use one of those doctors, they get reimbursed up to the $1,000 that the district's putting into an HRA for reimbursement. But the providers themselves are vetted through national claims data, and pointed it's like care management sort of, where we're really trying to steer employees to these doctors that are charging less but also have really positive outcomes.
Is there a large population of these doctors in Yuma?
They're all across the state, but yes, there are some even in Yuma County. And so that's one of the, I think, big differentiators compared to other neighboring districts who have what's called the Win to Win program, where it primarily pushes folks up to the valley. Whereas here, there are still some doctors within the network that can be beneficial through the program.
We now have so many doctors that are employees of Onvita. Is Onvita, is it a Garner program?
I'm not 100% sure of Onvita as a whole, but there are physicians that are part of Onvita that are also part of Garner.
Okay, so it's an individual thing for each
Mhm.
doctor working
Right.
for them.
Right. It's very often, so I was using Mayo Clinic as an example. Mayo Clinic historically is, wow, what an amazing hospital, and especially specialty hospital and all of that. But you're still going to find brand new doctors in Mayo Clinic compared to tenured doctors in Mayo Clinic. They're charging the same price because they work all in Mayo Clinic, but you may have a different outcome for one of the other providers. And so what Garner does is they find out what those docs are, and maybe that tenured doctor, he's charging a little bit more, but they will negotiate a lower cost with him because they know he has better outcomes, and then that steers more patients to see that specific provider. But you still may see a disparity in the level of care, even though it's all Mayo Clinic. And the same could be true with Onvita.
That's why I take the survey at the end of the visit.
Right.
I live to do.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So like you said, with the HSA, or whatever monies were put in there, that stays with the employee.
Right, so those who have an HSA now and will continue through the end of this plan year, they will still have access to the funds. And once they move to one of these PPO options, they can still use the funds for care. They just can no longer contribute or receive contributions, but they can still use that money. Or not, they can still keep it, it's their money. Thoughts, questions? Okay. This is, next page is our dental renewal. As you know, this year we moved it to a self-funding, platform. And it'd be essentially no adjustment to the rates. Ultimately, when we looked at this, the Mount Life actuary said, well, technically you could adjust your rates. And so when you see the 26, 27 fully insured equivalents, this is what they suggested. There's a decrease to the employee and then the employee plus spouse, but an increase to the children and the family tiers. Ultimately, we suggest that the district just keep those rates as is, because it's kind of blends all of that total premium together. I don't know if we needed to approve that. So
No.
just need to approve that. That's what we're looking at, kind of just renewing that. We have our dental claims here, running at about an 85% loss ratio over the last few years. This loss ratio for the current plan year, for December 25, it looks goofy, but that's because this premium reporting is based on that ASO price. It's not necessarily the fully insured equivalent. So ultimately, we're doing okay. Last year we paid $571,000 in claims, and this year they paid $570 this year. Or excuse me, we paid $570 in premium, and this year we only paid $520 in claims. So doing okay. The next page is our vision renewal. As it stands, there was no increase to the cost. What the district is also considering is this year moving the vision to a self-funding model. And so keeping the rates the same to employees, where we're seeing at $5.69, et cetera, for 2026, 27. What that would essentially cost the district is $1.60 per employee per month as the administrative fee. But the district would then fund to the current fully insured equivalent pricing. On the next page, it gives you an idea of where our claims stand and where we would expect to save a little bit of money here. The expectation is over the last 3 years, the district has paid out about $30,000 more per year in premium than IDA has paid in claims. So the goal would be that if utilization continues in the same trend, that this year the district could potentially save an additional $30,000 on self-funding the vision plan. This next slide is our life and our disability. At the top, we show current life rate, no changes there. Voluntary life stays the same as well. In the listing below, there was some discussion of adjusting the benefit for employees from 20,000 to possibly 50,000 or possibly 30,000 to increase those benefits. And so essentially at the very bottom last row, that's is the annual cost for each of those options. I don't know that that's been decided yet. It's still pending with the compensation committee and leadership, but that's essentially the cost difference annually in order to try to perhaps increase that life insurance benefit for employees. truck in here. These are our ancillary renewals. This is a pretty easy one, not a lot of changes. IMS did increase their charge for their network by 50%, but it's from $2 to $3, so not too wild. And then our other ancillary services, the FSA, HSA administration are all staying the same. Our EAP pricing is also staying the same. iSolve handles our COBRA administration. They generally increase cost by 5% each year. We don't have their formal renewal yet, but that's what is their trend. So we may see a little bit of an increase there, but relatively minor. Another option that's being considered is adjusting the AFLAC policies that are in place. So for the AFLAC benefits, those are going to be a hospital program, accident, critical illness, where a flat benefit is paid out to the employees who are enrolled in those programs when a diagnosis comes across, when they have a hospitalization, when they have an accident, et cetera. So currently, those programs are all set up as individual policies. And so the 5 of us could all have an accident plan, but we could all have different benefits and different pricing and different payroll deductions. And so it can become a bit of a bear to administer, excuse me, but also to enroll for an employee, because they tend to be upsold and paying for something that maybe they don't understand or that they don't have, or that they don't can't afford. And so what the goal will be is to change those from the individual policies to a group platform, which essentially streamlines all of that. The next page outlines the products that are being suggested and then the pricing differential. And so what we're going to see is about a 50% reduction in cost to the employees to do this. And then the administration will be much, much easier and far more streamlined. So if you look here in pink, that's all of the accident plans. In the middle column shows what the rates would be for an employee if we move to the group plan. And then on the right column, we see individual, which is their individual cost currently. So, I mean, even on at the very bottom, that's the highest accident plan benefit. There's still substantial savings across all tiers on all plans. And that really follows with the hospital plan, the critical illness, and the short-term disability benefits. So we're hopeful that employees currently enrolled will see some value there. And then it will refresh the interest in it for other employees so that they can have some additional coverage for all things of life. So we're hopeful that will really clean up a lot of the admin, but also feel like new benefits for the employees as well.
And so cancer's not one of them.
Oh, cancer is generally included in critical illness.
Oh, okay.
Bruce?
So Aflac is something new though, isn't it?
No, so these individual policies have been in place for many years. They tend to be legacy policies. So they've been in place for a very long time. The people who are enrolled in them currently can continue on the individual policy if they want. It will just be direct billed to them rather than by payroll deduction. So it's not really new. It's essentially we're refurbishing it. So changing it from, those individual legacy programs to a group program.
The district doesn't contribute any
No.
funds to this, it's all the individual employee.
Yeah, that's correct. There's no district cost to this. This is just sort of, what the employees enroll in. It's all by payroll deduction. There's no cost to the district at all.
Okay, but I'm not understanding what, we have the group insurance through the district. What is Aflac, what does it add to that for an employee?
Yeah, so with Aflac products, they're not tied to the major medical program at all. Instead, if you have, for example, an accident policy, if I leave here and I get into a car accident, I can file a claim with Aflac and they'll pay me $500 for my accident. I can use it to pay for my deductible, or I can use it to take a trip. It's just your money that they pay to you. So it's not coordinating any kind of benefit with your major medical plan. It's essentially just a plan that pays you for any of these types of things. If you have a hospitalization, they pay the money directly to you, again, to pay for your hospital stay, your deductible, your co-insurance, or you could use it to pay for, again, a vacation or something like that.
It's similar to it's like a supplemental
Yeah, it's like a supplemental program.
insurance.
A real life example, I have a hospital plan, and when I had my children, the twins, in May, I submitted my claim and we got back $2,000 for us being, the three of us being in the hospital. And I took that $2,000 and we used it to buy diapers and buy more bottles and buy, all things, baby related, but not necessarily medical expenses. It's just money for you to use, for people who maybe are out of work, they can use it to help pay for rent or groceries or car insurance, all of those things.
But District 1 has a contract with Aflac then? So Aflac was available on an individual basis for employees.
Correct. Yep, that's absolutely right. So this is essentially just offering those same plans, but just changing the funding mechanism so that they're getting the employees enrolled are getting a better cost for the same plans. Any other questions? All right, as far as next steps, I mentioned that already. We have already engaged Windsor, the independent actuary, to develop that price increase that I mentioned. We're going to look at them again as them to revisit those suggested prices with claims data through February. And then we will also see the final stop loss numbers in April after they have claims data through March, excuse me. It'll be at that time that the stop loss vendor will finalize any lasers or determine whether we need to have an aggregating specific deductible again this year. So we will know that in April. But in the meantime, we'll be using the independent actuary to develop fully insured equivalent pricing so that the district can prepare contracts, et cetera. That's everything that I have for today. Any questions?
On the life insurance, what is the standard amount across districts?
Yeah, it varies. 25,000 is kind of standard. It's usually between 25,000 and 50,000. When it's above a $50,000 benefit, then it's taxable, yeah. And so we generally don't see anything above that level. But 20,000 isn't unusual. It just, as times change, it doesn't go as far as it used to. That's why the district's looking into making some adjustments to that.
Thank you, Allison.
Thank you.
We'll hand it over to Mrs. Walden.
Well, thank you. Before you, you should have the summary of our income and expenses. And just like the last time we got together, it's the same things on there. It's just different dollar amounts. We're doing really well. We actually do have about 3.2 million set aside, but what we've done is we've held back a couple of the payroll deduction checks to leave the money in the county because the county we get a higher interest rate from the county than we do from the bank. So they're sitting there and we'll print them as soon as we need to fund it further. But for now, we're making better money having it sit at the county treasurer. Yeah.
Any questions for Pam? Questions? Next item, for the good of the order, does any member of the board have anything they would like to see on the next agenda, next meeting, or anything to add?
I guess just being on 2 campuses, I do hear people talking a lot more with the HR's daily updates. So those emails are doing great. It's been good if somebody's, oh, I missed that survey that was referenced,
Mhm.
just wait, it'll either pop up today or tomorrow, you know, those are neat things. And on a personal note, Teladoc is still great, I called it just yesterday and, all
Awesome.
set and square, so the benefits they're nice, they're great.
Now, since being here and seeing the benefits that are added, you guys are doing a great job. It's becoming a better plan for the employees.
Yeah, richer benefit for sure. Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's nothing else, we will adjourn at 5:50 PM.